And we are live. Hi, Jen.
I mean,
Uh, yes, we are very excited to have everyone here today. Jen and I were just sort of prepping before this, and
were we though?
we were, and I
Doing
just
okay.
again, as we said, today is World Mental Health Day, and Jen, I'm just really, I know I say this probably every time, but I'm so grateful to be able to work with you full time in this because, the stuff that we're going to be talking about today is such a fully integrated piece into what we do together alone, let alone, what we bring out into the world. But I'm so appreciative of that. And, we get to laugh and enjoy all of that too. And it's just to be here with you on this day is even more incredible. So just
Thank
glad
you.
to be here. So
Well, I feel
welcome.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. Want to say welcome to everyone who is here live with us and anyone who is watching the recording of this a little bit later. We all know you have busy schedules, so to jump in with us and take an opportunity to learn and see how some of this might be able to impact the work that you do as a leader. We just are really grateful to have you here. So as we said, today is World Mental Health Day, and it's an opportunity for people and communities to unite together. And the theme this year that the World Health Organization has for World Mental Health Day is mental health is a universal human right. And the idea is to really improve knowledge, raise awareness, and drive actions that promote and protect everyone's mental health as universal human rights. And one of the things that I really like they were talking about. So you can go to the website. We'll share that as well underneath this, just so people can take a look if there's resources and things like that that you want to integrate into what you're doing as a leader, or want to share with others. We'll include that as well at the end of this. But one of the things that they talk about on the site is that so good mental health is vital to our overall health and well-being. Yet 1 in 8 people globally are living with mental health conditions, which can impact their physical health, their well-being, how they connect with others, and their livelihoods. Mental health conditions are also affecting an increasing number of adolescents and young people. And we'll talk about that in a little bit here also. But for us, this was something that it felt like a no-brainer in terms of making sure that we were going to have live today, to have something for people to walk away with. And part of that is the integration of the work that we're doing and bringing into our Brave Human Leadership the course that we have, but also the work that we bring into all these organizations, and how it's informed by this trauma-informed leadership. And Jen, I'd love for you to kind of share, what that means, what that looks like, and just kind of give people an understanding of what that is.
I'm happy to. Thank you for all of that, Eileen. And yes, on this day, it's really important, I think, for all of us to show up with each other and recognize that this is a conversation we should be having. Is there an echo? Do I hear
It
it?
is. It's an echo. It's not you.
Okay. I was like, am I talking twice? What's happening? Um, so let's talk just quickly about trauma and a little bit around that, because I think this is a word that gets thrown around a lot about um, like what it really is, right? So I think often we view trauma as like this major thing that has happened to us, a deep
Right.
scar, a death, devastation, war, all of these different pieces, which yes, obviously can fit into that threshold. But when we talk a little broader about trauma, that's more maybe in our everyday. This is how it shows up, where it shows up, which includes in the workplace. And some of this trauma that's in our everyday is also probably a little bit more invisible.
Mm.
So we have to, as leaders, pay attention and have an awareness around this. That, it might be things like systemic racism or toxic work environments or intergenerational trauma, whatever it is that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. those triggers that are constant reminders of fear and stress based on those relationships come up often in the workplace. Think about it. You spend most of your waking hours at work, right? So, when this happens, when someone is faced with the threats that kind of overwhelm their coping resources, which I'm sure we've all been through, which creates a feeling of helplessness, fear, all of these different things then can manifest themselves as defensive or protective responses, right?
Yep.
So when we see that show up in the workplace, especially, I'm talking about, it's a need for control, or it's maybe someone who's not showing up, maybe someone who's skipping meetings. When the brain goes into this fight or flight or freeze or fawn or however many things we want to put in this, because it's all of that, it affects our ability to function optimally, really. It does. And I think we all have been in a situation where we have felt that, or, watched that happen around us. But it also affects our ability to adapt, especially when change is going on. And that's a big deal. Where in the world right now is there not change?
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
But what happens is this ripple effect really has a big impact on our families, our teams, our organizations, but most of all, the community at large. And that impact is big, and it's felt throughout anyone you come in contact with, or work with, or any of that. So when we talk about trauma-informed leadership, it's really important for leaders, like I said, to kind of have an awareness around it, but also to understand how more caring and empathetic responses, how maybe adjusting our communication methods, whatever those things are, that we can do a little bit differently to take care of the health and well-being of your people and yourself is critical. There's just quickly, there's a great book called Leader Awakened. It's by Simran McGregor, and it talks about really understanding the impact of your life story on your thoughts, your behaviors, your values, even your actions in the present day. How, something that happened to you a long time ago might come forward in some of the responses that you're giving today. And so that in and of itself, we just talked last week about storytelling, right?
Yes, right.
Which is amazing how everything's interconnected. But so many good things happen when we bring an awareness to our own story, but also to the stories of others. That includes things like your increased ability to navigate uncertainty, to assess difficulty, to really connect, right? And that's at the core of everything we talk about. So that's kind of the basis, the idea around what trauma-informed leadership is, and why today, I think more than ever, it's a conversation we need to be having. This is something that affects every single person in the workplace.
Yeah, definitely. And you and I talk a lot about how, even more so now that we don't just separate here. Here's my work self that I come into. I can just disregard everything I've ever felt or experienced or known as soon as I either, pass whatever proverbial door you have to get to your work setting. It just doesn't happen. It's not a piece of that. And to really understand that all of us come into this, if we're asking for all of our people to come in, to be innovative, to be and build trust with each other, to do all of this work that we need to do to move our businesses forward, it requires us bringing our full selves, and our full selves are a piece of that, and ensuring that we understand and have leaders who can work with that, not against it. Incredibly powerful and important in doing and serving the people that we work with every day.
Absolutely. It's a part of our everyday. And I think, when we have those conversations and we learn, like we talked about last week, when we learn how to tell our story, but we give space for other people to do the same, to talk about shared experiences and talk about lived experiences that maybe we don't understand or have never been a part of or don't know. But we need to listen. We need to be listening to those stories so that we understand what it is that other people need besides ourselves, because everybody has different needs and desires around, anything in life. But in the workplace, we have to meet people where they are.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the key. At the end of the day, that's what we need to be doing. And, for some leaders who are more, authoritarian leaders or transactional leaders, right? This is a difficult thing. But if you're a relational leader, you're a people leader, you're someone who understands the human element to, like you said, I think we had this false sense of reality that we could leave it at the door, right? Have you ever been told that? I've been told that.
Absolutely, yes.
leave that at the door, right? And what's so bizarre about that is what you're saying is, don't come into this workspace as your whole self, because I'm asking you to leave part of it outside.
Yeah. And
we cannot function as human beings when we're half of ourselves or a quarter of ourselves or any fraction of ourselves. And we need to find ways to support the whole self. And that means, sometimes some difficult stuff. But that's why we have to be educated around this stuff so we can fully support in the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. And thus that's why for us was really important that this is what we would bring up today and want to have as a part of the conversation, an educational piece for World Mental Health Day. So with that, this trauma-informed leadership piece is definitely integrated into our Brave Human Leadership work that we do within the course that we have launching, which starts next week. So if anyone still has some development opportunities that they'd like to take, and this is a piece of that, and we're join us. There will be cookies, maybe. Just kidding.
Did you say cookies?
But yeah, so this for us, and I know this is a busy time of year for a lot of folks. This is when people are, the rubber hits the road and people are really feeling it. And we're wanting to give folks the space to be able to meet their people who are feeling that entirely right now. So, and one of the other things too, Jen, that we've kind of talked about a little bit is this whole idea of the generations, this Generation X, and what is it about including this trauma-informed leadership with that generation that is so incredibly important?
So, it's fascinating because as I've done a lot of research on these pieces and the ideas behind how we look at different generations, and there's all the talk about, there's 5 different generations in the workplace for the first time and blah, 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 blah. But what's fascinating to me is, even though we might know that, we haven't really adapted, especially in this space. So, a couple things that came out. I was reading a McKinsey article, and this was mind blowing. And it said about 3/4 of Gen Z around the world said the availability of mental health resources is one of the key things when they're selecting an employer. So hear this clearly, because this is what people are looking for. It's what 3/4. That's 75%, just in case you don't know how to do math, because I did that in my head.
That was good.
Thank you. But let's take that a step further. Here's what it went on to say. About 22% of Gen Zers in a recent McKinsey survey reported using digital mental health tools. Okay, so 22%. We have telehealth, we have digital tools where you can find a therapist like that, which is phenomenal. However, 80% of them stopped using those tools after a little while, because basically what they said is the platforms that they were on actually fail to engage Gen Z audiences. Okay, so another survey right behind that then showed that 85% of those respondents don't use mental health benefits mainly because they didn't know they were there, or they didn't know how to use them. And this is where that stigma comes in, right?
Yeah.
Where no one wants to talk about this. So therefore, I'm not going to go ask my benefits coordinator or my HR person, or because I don't want to share that I might be going through something.
Yeah.
And that's real life. That's what's happening, right?
It is.
People don't even know that those benefits are there or don't know how to use them.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. And so just again, open up those channels of communication to share that kind of stuff. If you have an opportunity to be able to do that, or have the voice and platform within your organization to share that information, do it. People, I mean, people want it. Your people want to hear that and know that and see what's available. And hopefully we'll go in just a second. We're going to go through the sort of the 5 properties of trauma-informed leadership. And I think some of those might then be helpful in how we're having those kinds of conversations and the spaces that we're setting up for people to be able to and feel the ability to come to ask for those types of things when they need it, because we're humans, and in all reality, it's going to hit everyone at some point, whether or not it has yet. So, yeah. So with that, thank you. I mean, I'm a statistics nerd, so I love that you bring the numbers in.
and there's an odd piece of me that is too, which is very strange because, I was an English major and hated math, but there's something though about real life results and data that can't be argued against. And I think it's something that we need to utilize to help understand this, right? We have to do this research, and the science and the neuroscience behind everything is what drives me. So this is important stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive in a little bit then too. So when we talk about there's for trauma-informed leadership, there's sort of these 5 properties, and promoting awareness, shifting attitudes, fostering safety, providing choice, and highlighting strengths. So we kind of wanted to do a little bit of highlight in each of those to really kind of walk through what that looks like when we live and do those things out loud in the way that we lead. So I just kind of want to talk through so we have promote awareness. That's our first of the 5 properties. What does that mean? What does that look like for folks to promote awareness around trauma-informed leadership?
So there's a lot of places to go for info around this stuff, right? But what I have found, and I've done a ton of research on this and went through a certification process, but what I found to be true was that most of them talked about the same things, and they really revolved around these 5 pieces. And so the Achieve Center has some really great ideas around this. So we're going to kind of go with that. These were the 5 properties I felt tie most closely to the work that we have been doing with our clients, and we know it works. So one of the first steps, obviously, around that promote awareness is we have to educate people, right? I mean, that may seem very simple and like, okay, great. And that's the number one thing, is we have to educate staff about trauma, give them an opportunity to understand it and its effects on, not just the workplace, but on each other as human beings, right? So, when we're giving people an opportunity to apply the learning to their workspace, things change. And it also gives people the opportunity to self-reflect, which we all need. And in order to do this safely, because this will bring up some stuff, right? A lot of times it does. And so in order to do this safely, it means that you have to be creating these safe spaces to do so, but also learn how to have confidential conversations, learn how to help them create self-care plans, right? We have seen such amazing results in organizations who take mental health seriously and take their people's needs and well-being seriously. So, promoting awareness a lot is about education.
And that can be educating ourselves, because there is an opportunity to say, look, I don't know. And that's okay also. And so taking the chance to say, I don't know everything,
Mhm.
and learning ourselves as leaders first and foremost, just having you be here with us
Yeah,
is a step in that direction,
that's right.
right? So it's okay to not know everything, and take the steps to even have self-awareness within this space is incredible.
For sure.
Yeah.
So
And then go on.
no,
Sorry.
go
Go.
ahead, go ahead.
I was going to say, then moving next is it goes into this shifting of attitudes. So what
Yeah.
does that mean and look like?
So I love this work because a lot of this brings me back to my sports psychology roots, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's fascinating how, and it's funny because we were just working with a client previous to this, and we were talking about the inner chatter and the things that we say to ourselves and how that shows up. And I think, yes, most of the education being a trauma informed leader is knowledge based,
Mhm.
but this piece actually requires you, the leader, to actually work to shift your own attitude and response to the behaviors you see in the workplace. So it kind of walks through this idea of, instead of the automatic judgment that we bring to the table that we make based on the behavior we see, we need to practice having some curiosity instead around the why behind the behavior. So here's an example. Eileen, you and I are working together, which we are,
We
which
do.
is weird, right? Yes. And let's say you, and this doesn't happen, trust me, people, I'm just saying. But pretend that you become defensive when I bring something
Okay.
up regarding how you did something, right?
Mhm.
My immediate judgment might be something like, God, what's wrong with her? Right?
Mhm.
In my head, like, what's wrong with you? Or, she's too hard to work with. She's too stubborn. Or all of these different judgments around this specific behavior are the instantaneous thought, because that is, that's a normal knee jerk reaction. Instead, to shift that a little differently, I would replace that "what's wrong with you" judgment to "I wonder what happened to cause that response today."
Mm.
So instead of "what's wrong with you," what happened for you? So what we're doing, in essence, we're taking the behavior off of the actual person and onto the event, right?
Mm.
That may
Yep.
explain the behavior. This is where we have to stay empathetically curious.
Yes.
And it's a practice, because it's sometimes, if we're in a hurry and we need things done and we make a quick judgment call, it's not always the best. And a lot of times there are reasons.
Yeah.
And it's not an excuse. Hear that clearly. When people aren't getting things done, that's a performance issue.
Yes.
But if the reason behind some of the behaviors that we see can be a trauma issue, and
Yeah.
we have to ask the right questions and stay curious around that.
Right. To keep
Which
the
leads,
door open rather than shut
yeah,
it
yes,
immediately.
yeah,
Yeah.
because when we're making a judgment, the door's shut. When we're
Mhm.
asking, being curious about it, the door stays open, and that takes us to that next piece, which is fostering safety, right?
Right.
So,
Yep.
so we talked about how trauma can increase that feeling of threat, the feeling of whether it's physical safety or psychological safety. Um, what we need to do in order to shift that is to find ways to actually involve others, right? That this
Right.
can't be a directive about safety. It can't be, this is what's going to keep each other safe.
Mhm.
It's best done within relationship. And the relationship we have with each other, we can co-create these safe environments. And we need to remember that ripple effect that we have, right? That's
Yeah.
how we get there. And that safety is always rooted in trust, always.
Yeah.
So ask yourself a question. If you're a leader, how much do your people actually trust that you have their best interests in mind, right? That
Right.
you can make decisions that won't impact them negatively.
Mhm.
A leader's influence on that safety is magnified, and we have to recognize that. As a leader, we hold that power to do so. So tread lightly, because that's huge.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I mean, it's so incredibly powerful. And those folks that we've worked with that have been intentional in this space,
Yep.
I mean, even when we talk about performance after that, right? There's such an amazing increase in all of those things and engagement and all of this when we create those psychologically safe spaces. Look, we've
Absolutely.
we've talked about physical safety for a while now, and just the reality of what we have now. Really being intentional about the psychological safety of these spaces is just as important for folks. So,
For sure.
absolutely.
And because of that, we want to, the fourth piece is to provide choice, right? So this is, again, going back to that leader, consider the power dynamics, right, of leadership. Like, what does that look like? What does yours look like in your team? One way that I loved, that I've heard talked about a couple times actually, is to shift the idea and the action from holding power over to sharing power with, right?
Yeah.
That's a huge change. It's like the hierarchy is here or it's here, right? And are we in this with each other? Even if we're a leader of a team, doesn't mean that we need to have power over, but that we can share power with. And when we invite all voices into these conversations, it changes, right? It's built from those relationships that we talk about all the time that have to be built on trust, on respect, on support, on being able to show up with each other. That's everything.
Definitely. Yeah, it's such an interesting, such a great visual too. Just to think about what that looks like. And if you're imagining and really understanding and seeing what that looks like in yours, what does it look like? What does that power dynamic look like with those that you work with? It's a fascinating, just kind of mental experiment too.
Yeah.
For
So
sure.
the last one is a piece that we do all the time, and that is highlight strengths. I think, when I work with clients, when we go and sit down and have these conversations with our clients, one of the things that we love to do, we call it the confidence resume. And it is sitting down and, being able to take a piece of paper. You can do it on a napkin or a scrap of paper. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but number it 1 to 10 and write down your strengths. And challenge yourself. See, is this a difficult thing to do? Because for a lot of people, this is hard. This is hard because we're never asked to do that. We are all, I joke about this all the time, but think about a SWOT analysis. That is 75% focused on the negative.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, and this is the sports psychology side of me that says we get what we focus on. And so if we're going to focus on the positive and looking at my strengths and really highlighting the strengths of the people around me, that's where I need to stay, right? This contributes to resilience, our ability to be resilient, being able to really focus on what I'm good at.
Right.
Yeah.
And especially, having come from the technology space before, you and I've talked about this, and we are really good at moving forward and saying we messed this up or something isn't quite right here. Let's keep moving and changing that versus what have we done really well? Like what was now delivered because of the work that we've done here? Can there be improvements? Sure. But can we just celebrate this for a moment too? So it's just a really incredibly powerful thing to go forward and highlight those strengths for ourselves and for our teams and the people that we work with.
And it doesn't have to be a big production, right? You can do this today. Anyone who's listening to us, go find someone. Even if, nobody reports to you, you don't need that. Go find someone and say thank you, gratitude, but also share something that you noticed that they did really well or that they do really well. Tell them, let them know that you see it. Yeah. It's moments like that shift. We talk about culture shifts in small pieces, and those are the small pieces that we're talking about, is how to do those one at a time.
Absolutely. So I know we're at our 30-minute mark. So I just
well, we knew today was going to be a longer one because it's such an important thing. So
we definitely did. And again, I just want to thank everyone so much for being here on World Mental Health Day. And if you can take one of those action items, and I love that last one, just to encourage you to tell someone today something that they did really well and highlight their strengths. And if you want to share it, we'd love to hear about it.
And highlight yours too.
Yes.
Right. Yes. Don't forget about yourself in all of that.
Absolutely.
Thanks for showing up with us today.
Thanks, everybody. We will see you next week. Have a good one.
Thanks.
Yeah. Bye.